Welcome to Canada, Bangladesh Social Justice Action Research Alliance. On this platform, we talk about issues that impact social justice locally and globally. Our conversations center around equity, fairness, and social justice. I'm really excited today that this is the actually first conversation that we are organizing about Canada's federal election, that Aisha Noor and Jahangir Noor, two generations, mother and daughter, they both are running for NDP's local ridings in the federal election. We will have so many questions to ask. Without further ado, Aisha and Noor, welcome to our conversation.
Thank you so much for having us.
So the first question, Aisha, and when I first saw it, can you please tell us about yourself? People who don't know you. Most of our audiences are actually immigrants, and in Canada, and English-speaking countries around 5 different countries. So could you tell us about who you are? How did you get into politics, each of you?
Yeah, sure. So my mom was born in Chittagong, and my father first came to Canada in the 70s, got married, and then my mom was sponsored. I was born in Hamilton. I've been raised in Guelph, and I've made the decision with my husband to raise my family here. I'm a registered nurse. I've been nursing now for over 23 years. My first specialty was labor and delivery, which I did for over 15 years here in Guelph. And then I transitioned over to mental health. I have been a union activist. I have held positions of leadership within the Ontario Nurses Association. I'm involved with my professional nursing organization, and even at the national level with a certification in mental health specialty. I've been involved in human rights, education around health and safety, talking about inclusivity and diversity, and recognize how important it is that, racialized minority people should be recognized across the board in all different sectors. And so the NDP is very much in line with my own fundamental core values, and that's a bit about myself.
And Noor.
I'm Noor Jahangir, and I'm the federal NDP candidate for Wellington Halton Hills. I am a recent graduate from the University of Guelph, and I majored in sociology. For me, I knew that I had to go into social sciences because ever since I was young, it was all about how can I give back to the community and how can I understand the issues that go on, not just in Canada, but, all over, and understand how I can help and understand just global issues, right? There's been multiple times where I've talked to students, adults, and they just don't understand or don't really know about structural racism, inequality, and these are all things that matter to me. And for me, it's all about being a voice for Canadians and the youth. I'm also a public sector employee, so on my free time, I'm either with my family. My mom was born as she said, she was born and raised in Hamilton. Both of my parents are from Pakistan. My dad was born in Pakistan. And yeah, that's
okay. So I have organized a few questions. So basically the idea that today, because, people can watch and rewatch this conversation subsequently. So at the start, so I'll ask you a set of questions, and subsequently, segment those specific question answers into small videos, and we will circulate it so that your campaign, your conversation can be spread as widely as possible. So that's why I have divided the questions accordingly. Now, each of you are running for NDP, and I must say at the start, my own political philosophy aligns with NDP's politics, so I'm not going to coy about it. It is what it is. What does it mean for each of you to run for NDP? Why NDP? I'll start with Aisha, then we'll come to Noor.
A really good question, Feroz. When you look at the different political parties, one thing was for sure, I wanted to continue the advocacy that is very much needed. So my advocacy started with workers' rights, learning a lot about the unions and how those values are very much in line with the NDP. So naturally, I learned a lot about the NDP. And more specifically, when we talk about universal health care, we are the only country that offers universal health care, but don't include pharmacare or don't include the cost of prescription drugs. So I knew, working with the Canadian Labour Congress and lobbying for pharmacare, that NDP was going to incorporate this as part of their platform and something that they were going to fight for and campaign for. Because at the end of the day, it is about fighting for people. It's about fighting for social justice. And, strengthening our Medicare system is very important to me, especially since I've witnessed in my practice a lot of the injustices that occur. People are struggling with affordability. People are struggling with mental illness, and there isn't the support out there in the community. So I didn't think that I was actually going to be the candidate when I first ran in 2019. But one thing was for sure was I was going to participate in the campaign and do whatever I could to support the political party in hopes that we could win. It just so happened that I got a lot of support from the NDP community and the membership, and was asked to run, and that's why I'm here as your candidate. A lot of work needs to be done, and I'm very confident that the NDP government is the answer for this transformational change.
Absolutely. And Noor?
So for me, ever since I was little, even, seeing my mom grow up and advocating for people and, people's rights and giving back to the community, I always knew that I had to do the same. So when as I was helping my mom with her 2019 campaign and learning more about the NDP platform and what we have to offer, one thing stood out to me, and that was that the NDP was always fighting for people and fighting for Canadians. So, thinking about my future and thinking about how I'm going to be able to afford living in Canada, basic things such as housing, pharmacare, these are things that, matter a lot to me. And the NDP platform was one platform that really stood out to me when it came to affordability and housing. I've had multiple discussions with my mom about, Mom, you need to help me understand how I'm going to be able to afford a home at the age of, 25, 24, 26. And it's really scary that there's no real answer. You know what I mean? There needs to be change. There needs to be fundamental change. And the NDP platform is the only platform that speaks out to me about, all around helping Canadians, instead of,
the wealthy and the privileged.
Exactly.
Right?
So, enough is enough, and I'm really frustrated when it comes to thinking about my future. When I talk to my friends, it's the same response, like, what are we going to do in the future? When I think of even, moving to pursue graduate studies, I shouldn't have to think about, how am I going to afford to eat and pay tuition and pay rent, right? It's really easy to say, but when you think about how realistic it is, for me and, I'm sure for other youth, it's not very realistic as of now, right? So there needs to be change.
And also the climate crisis.
Oh, yeah, the climate crisis. Ever since I was little, this must have been since I was like 12 years old, I'm like, Mom, we're going to die. Our planet is going to light on fire and we're going to die. And she's like, honey, you're only 10 years old, right? The government, we're going to handle it. It's 2021. It's still not being handled, right?
It's unfortunate that governments between the Liberals and the Conservatives haven't really truly responded to the climate crisis.
No.
And I firmly believe that the NDP are committed to responding to the climate crisis and treating it as an emergency.
Yeah. And fighting it like we actually want to win, because we can clearly see the Conservatives don't even believe in the climate crisis, and the Liberals are just acting like it doesn't exist, right? It's really frustrating. It's really, really frustrating.
I often say this, like Aisha, I am a parent. And now this question is very important, that your political philosophy, the way you look at the world, in many, many, many ways have been shaped by your mother. And a lot of the times we don't recognize it adequately. Like, imagine that today you are running for NDP, but your training started, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
decades ago.
100%, right?
Yeah.
When I was 10 years old, I didn't, oh, sorry.
Yeah. So question to you, and this question to, particularly, I want you to think about the young generation, young generation in Canada, young generation around the world. I am so proud of both of you that, you both are South Asian, Muslim women, women of color. I did not see, Dolly was actually the first Bangladeshi ever to win and actually go to the parliament. And to me, it was because, you see, we can see ourselves in those roles. At the same time, I personally have witnessed in different, meetings, our mayor, honorable mayor of Toronto, in one meeting, and I felt so frustrated that he could not even pronounce Dolly's name properly. And when I am, as a teacher, whether I've been teaching for over 2 decades, when I, as a doctoral student here, or when I work here as a session instructor or as a teacher, I tell my students that pronounce my name well. I can say your name Matthew. I can say your name is Anderson. Why could you not tell my name properly? So, question to you, Noor, how your political philosophy, the way you look at the world, today you are running for a local riding, how your worldview has been shaped by your mother, Aisha Jahangir.
So, my mom has inspired me ever since I was little. I used to be 5 years old. I used to carry around a notebook and I used to take notes about how my mom would respond to people, her mannerism, how she would act, what she valued. I still have this notebook. I'm not kidding. And, it's so funny because ever since I was little, like, it was all about, fighting for people. My mom used to call me and be like, I'm not coming home because I am working another 12 hours. And I'd be like, Mom, you've been at work for the past how long? How are you still at work? And she's like, people need me, right? I'm not just gonna leave, right? So even, growing up, like, it's just so frustrating when, like, I talk to people and they're all about, like, putting themselves first, because it's like, yes, I'm so young, and people may see me and say, oh, how can you, so young, advocate for Canadians? But it's like, I'm going to be the one that's living in the future, right? Like, what we decide today is going to affect my generation more than it's going to affect, someone who's older. That's how I view it, right? So, it's all about my mom inspiring me, being a public sector employee, being a nurse, being a mental health nurse, being on the College Board of Nurses. Her 2019 campaign, my mom didn't have a lot of political experience. And I saw that my mom, she has it all, right? So for me, I needed to do the same. So my mom has inspired me in many ways, shapes, and forms. And this is just my biggest endeavor yet. I've had all her support with everything I've done. And I know that she believes in me. I believe in her. And I'm so glad to have, such a great role model in my life. It goes without speaking that I could not be the woman that I am today without my mom, right? When it comes to the way that I look at things, the way that, I act, it's all coming from, having such a great role model in my life. And this is, like I said, the biggest endeavor yet. So.
Yeah. I am going to add, though, I remember when she was growing up, probably in grade 3, she came home saying, Mom, I don't like it if you speak Urdu in front of my friends, or, people have difficulty pronouncing my name. Often, like, her name is Noor. And being a Muslim, we pay a lot of attention, and it's a very thoughtful thing where we're deciding the name of our children because they're so meaningful. And so, they would call her Nora, and she would try to correct them, and then she would, be a little bit sheepish around wanting to correct people. And then I had to explain to her how important and significant her name was. She wanted to pretend that she was Hispanic because she got some negativity from amongst her peers because she was identified as being Southeast Asian. Those were experiences I didn't have growing up, to be honest. And even though we're seeing a much more diverse population with immigrants, yet she still had some fear and shame of judgment. So that was concerning.
And like I'm not even kidding, I would come home. I remember it would be like the day before Eid, right? And we would always put mehndi or henna on our hands, and I would cry to my mom and say, Mom, people at school would make fun of me, right? Like, it was a huge judgment call. And being that young, I didn't really understand, like, I didn't understand why people thought that way, right? Like, even to this day, people mispronounce my name all the time, and I always need to correct them. It's not difficult, right? Like, my name is Noor. It's not difficult. I always get, newer. I get like, I just all across the board, like and my name is 4 letters, right? So it's really sad. Like, even my little brother experiences some things that I experienced when I was younger, and this is like 12 years later, right? So we still need to break the ice. There's so much room for improvement.
And we can do better.
And we can do 1,000 times better, right? I talk to people that are adults, young adults, that aren't willing to break the ice, and it's like, we really need to do better, and we need to break it.
Absolutely. And in regards to the name, I also want to cite a study that was done in 2018, just 3 years ago, that University of Toronto and Ryerson University sent out more than 3,000 resumes, identical qualifications, exactly everything same. Just someone's name was Noor and someone's name was Nora. Changed the name.
Right.
And what happened, that people with Muslim name, with South Asian name, just imagine 38% people did not even get a phone call. And this is a study, and the study is called How Samir is less qualified than Samuel. So we think that names don't matter, but names are profoundly, it has a deep and you see that a lot of people will adopt. I know many of my students or my Bangladeshis, Bengalis, they'll adopt someone's name is Muhammad, but they will say, oh, my name is Mo. And what happens, they become subject to 2 criticism. One, we will tell them, oh man, your name is Muhammad, how the hell did you become Mo? But we don't understand that Mo is a systemic violence, symbolic violence. We don't understand it, right? Now I'm going to ask you a very difficult question to both of you, and I want you to reflect on it. In a recent conversation, Justin Trudeau was asked this question, that among G7 countries, Islamophobia is highest in Canada. And Justin Trudeau's answer to that question is, it's because of digital disinformation, misinformation, polarization, all of these reasons why the Islamophobia is so high in Canada. Now, you both are Muslim women, women of color, South Asian women, and you both are running in this federal election. Question, I'll start with Aisha, that in a climate where we can see that the Islamophobia is high and it's documented, Justin Trudeau is saying it's disinformation, and obviously there are documents because of disinformation, polarization, all this is happening. These are not untrue, they're true. What does it mean for you to run in a climate where we had in June the brutal murder of an entire Muslim family, just a city away from where you and I are located right now in London, Ontario? What does it mean for you, being a South Asian Muslim woman, a woman of color, to run for NDP? What is NDP doing, or has been doing, or will do if NDP is elected, becomes the government majority, to fight Islamophobia in Canada?
So first of all, it was complete tragedy to hear of what happened with the family in London, Ontario. But what was even more what was even more astonishing or scary was the response from our Muslim community to the effects of what happened. I had attended the Muslim Society of Gulf Vigil at the mosque, where friends and allies and community members were all invited to attend. And there were many speakers that came to the mic to speak to what had occurred. And what really bothered me, to be honest, was they were asking for tolerance, right? That we need to that Canada should tolerate different multi-faiths and people coming from different ethnic backgrounds or different countries. And I don't agree with that. What we need to do is we need to fight for and stand up for acceptance, right? We need to be treated as equal. We need to be respected. We add so much to this country. We bring values, we bring, professionals, we bring different ways of thinking, we have a different perspective, we enrich this country. So what I'm asking for is an acceptance and be valued for what we are and who we are. I'm a Muslim, I say that proudly. My ethnic background is Pakistani. I celebrate Eid and Ramzan just like people would celebrate Christmas, right? And those values are ones that I want to pass on. We speak Urdu at home. It's important for me to speak Urdu at home so that my daughter doesn't lose her language. Spending time in our cultural events, those are all very important. So what I would say is that if we are one of the countries or the only country that has the most Islamophobia amongst G7s, then I would look at the leadership, the government. What are you going to do about this? I remember back in 2019, Trudeau and the blackface came out. And immediately a reporter was calling, and what he said to me was, I would like a comment or a statement from you. Do you believe that Justin Trudeau is racist? And I said, that is not the question. The question is not, is Justin Trudeau racist? The question is, now that you know that racism exists in our country, what are we going to do about it? Right? And we wait. We wait to see what is the response. And I think what's really important is, in order for our voices to be heard, we have to make room. We have to find a seat and use our voices and speak collectively. NDP talks about solidarity. The issues that Indigenous people have, people of color, Black people, those are ones that we can relate to. And we need to collectively work together to raise our voices so that our issues can be addressed, so that we can be heard and we can be part of the process, right? NDP has done phenomenal work. We have the most diverse slate of candidates. LGBTQ, we have racialized, we have youth, we have women, the most. And I think that in itself is something that we need to celebrate. And these candidates are sitting even in winnable ridings, right? So there is potential. And I would really encourage, others to support racialized members that are candidates that are running, or support youth that are running, right? The other thing I wanted to say is that, support in hopes that we can win, because it's not just my win, it is our win, right? And I hope I've answered that question. I think.
Yeah. I mean, you have given a wonderful and passionate answer, and particularly the point that you said, it is so on point. There's a difference between tolerance and acceptance. I mean, you know it very well that I was, who doesn't? I was born in a Bengali Muslim family. Punjabi, kurta, is one of our favorite dresses. You see, whenever I can, and I say this all the time, is that now when I want to walk down in a breezy weather, like, this is summer, I just want to wear a very comfortable kurta. I'm afraid. I feel afraid. I feel afraid. When I see a black truck or any truck, like, going by, and I see the guy sitting behind the steering wheel is a white man, I tell you, and I'm not going to be at all, I'm going to be blunt about it. I feel scared and intimidated because I know that, and this is one of the things that I say, that maybe Aisha and Noor, they're Canadian, but we have not been able to erase that hyphenatedness, that you are a South Asian Canadian, you are a Pakistani Canadian, you are a Muslim Canadian. We have not become Canadian. And the sad thing about it, Aisha, that I also want you to think about it, is that when you speak unapologetically about the structural racism in Canada, it's not only the white, you have heard that saying, the white people saying, oh, go back to your country. I'm sure that, I remember that when I came to Canada as a graduate student, the person who came to pick up at the airport, he told me, what do you think about Canada? I didn't have any pre-existing family here. And I told him, I think that Canada is the most peaceful country in the world. And he was a historian. He was smiling. He said that your opinion might change. So just in 9 years, I can imagine that how things have changed. My perception has changed. I did not know anything about indigenous, history, how the colonial history of Canada. I didn't know anything of that. So the question is what you said, acceptability. I don't want to be tolerated. I am contributing to this economy. I am contributing, and it is well documented. It's not just immigrants have produced much more jobs than the Canadian. And this is one of the other things. We come to this country, we have an attitude of slavish gratitude. Oh, thank you very much. You have let me come into this country. Right? We have that attitude, slavish gratitude. And we don't want to. When you raise these questions, people from your own community, South Asian community, will tell you, Aisha, why do you ask so many questions? Why do you problematize it? And you know what really hurts is that when you hear from the same community, if you have so many problems, why don't you go back to Pakistan? Why don't you go back to Bangladesh? From your own community. Now, this is, I say, I don't blame them. I say this is the result of our attitude of slavish gratitude, which is our psychic colonization. We need to get out of our, brain boundary that, no, I'm contributing to this economy. Noor, you have grown up, gone to college, university, you have studied at Guelph. Do you see a rise in Islamophobia? How you have seen things differently than as opposed to what it used to be?
100%. I remember the tragedy that happened in London, and I woke up and I went upstairs to my mom and my dad, and I showed them, the article that had came out, and I broke down in tears because, people need to wake up and realize that there is a huge issue. We see it with Islamophobia. We see it how the Liberal government is handling Indigenous communities and what is going on. Justin Trudeau is fighting First Nation kids in court. And what are we doing? What change needs to happen, right? And, when it comes to Islamophobia, it really hits home because when we were even at the vigil and I was listening to the speakers talk, I remember someone was talking and they had said, my grandmother wears a hijab and now I am scared and telling her that she should not be going on walks late at night. And I thought to myself, why is it that you are telling your grandmother to stop going on walks at night because she wears a hijab, right? How is that even a question on the table, right? Instead of telling your grandmother to not go on walks and to not wear a hijab, we need to understand the bigger problem, right? The problem that Muslims face, soon as someone sees a hijab on a woman, there's the first thought that comes to them is obviously they're Muslim, right? We see, even in France, the ban, and it's just, it's really sad. Like, you know, every time we talk about it, like, I actually break down in tears, because it's like the whole idea is, you know, instead of telling Muslims to, you know, not do this and not, like, you know, not wear hijab, take your hijab off, you know, why are we telling Muslims to do that? Why can't people just accept us for who we are? This is who I am. You know, my mom used to wear a burqa in high school. She used to tell me that kids used to make fun of her for wearing a burqa. Why? Why?
Yeah, I mean, there are huge issues. You know, women expressing fear of going out in public. The husbands or the brothers are expressing fear and concern about their wives, their daughters, being identified as being Muslims. That is a huge problem. It needs to be addressed. You know, we need to have faith that we can bring about changes that will reassure our Muslim community or racialized members that we can make sure that people are safe. After the tragedy in London, I have a colleague that wears a hijab, and she asked me to walk her to the car because she was afraid to go out to her vehicle at the end of her shift, and expressed anxiety. So when people are expressing anxiety, you know, the government has a responsibility, or elected officials have a responsibility to listen and to respond to it. It's not acceptable, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and instead instead nothing is being done, right? Like, instead family members are telling us, don't, you know, you shouldn't be wearing a hijab. You should be careful where you go. You need to make sure, you need to be aware of your surroundings. But it's like the government's job, point blank period, is to protect us. Why is the government failing to protect us?
Absolutely. I had a Muslim brother tell me that he had bought his daughter an Allah locket, and the daughter said that she was afraid to wear it out in public, that she would be targeted because she would be openly identifying as a Muslim. And that's really sad to hear. Really, really sad to hear. And it needs to be addressed immediately.
Absolutely.
People should not be living in fear.
Absolutely. And now this thing, I mean, so one of the things that I personally felt, and I also hold myself accountable, responsible thinking about it, is when you come here as an immigrant, let's say you grew up here, you have one understanding of Canada. But if you come here as an immigrant, to develop the kind of understanding that you would have if you would grow up here is going to take some time.
Mhm.
So this question has two different parts. One thing is that when Justin Trudeau stands for a photo op that, you know, the refugees are coming from Syria, and Justin Trudeau is handing over, you know, the jackets and everything, and you have people who are saying, look, this is only possible in Canada, is that people from Syria come here as refugees, and this is how we are treating. We don't see the greater picture. We don't think about its entire integration. We don't understand that, you know, what does it mean for a political photo op and what is actually the true reality. Question to you, Aisha, that what are some of the things that we as immigrants do not understand about the political realities of Canada when we come here, and why we immigrants need to participate in politics more and more? It's like, you know, we don't understand Canada's, you know, politics. And then what would you do? What would be your message, like, considering that, okay, so these are the people who are planning to come to Canada in future. I say that, of course, come to Canada. If I could, I would bring like millions of Bangladeshis in Canada, given our climate, you know, change situation, economic challenges. But I would want them to know these are the true realities of Canada. Don't buy into the sanitized, polished, airbrushed image of Canada. What we don't understand, why do we need to take part in politics?
Very good question. I think a lot of immigrants may not be familiar with the NDP because the reality is that the NDP have yet to form government, right? So the only parties that our immigrants may be familiar with are the Liberals and the Conservatives. But I think what people need to remember that usually our progressive policies that have been implemented by the Liberal government have only come to life because of the pressure from the NDP. For example, our universal health care that we take so much pride in. It was the NDP government that introduced Medicare in Saskatchewan back in the 1960s. And it was the NDP pressure to make it national across the country because we recognized how important it was for the government to support healthcare. And, you know, back in that day and time, people had lost their homes, paying for medical bills. And we continue to fight to strengthen our Medicare and fulfilling the dream from Tommy Lee Douglas about including pharmacare. There was a report from Dr. Eric Hoskins that completely supported the notion and really stressed the point of including pharmacare if we want to have a country that is well looked after, right? And also how it would be actually responsible financially to include pharmacare in our healthcare system. With regards to immigration and refugees, it was always the NDP that fought on their behalf to allow them into our country. And it just so happened that at the time, the Liberals were in government. So it might be misleading for a lot of immigrants because they think it's the Liberals that brought us in here. But don't forget, it was the NDP that fought for refugees. It is the NDP that continued to fight against human rights violations, even to this day across the globe, right? And the other thing is, you know, it was true for Chilean refugees and Vietnamese refugees that came in the 1970s. And more recently, we see the Syrian refugees and the Afghan refugees. You know, Liberals may take credit for that, but it is the NDP that fight for family reunification, right? We know how important it is to make sure that families are able to be together. So we support family reunification, and no other party does that the way the NDP does.
And why is it important for we the immigrants? Like when we come here, sometimes they feel like, okay, no, Aisha is running for politics, it's okay. But if we don't take part in politics, our rights will not be protected. In your view, you have, you know, being a South Asian Muslim woman, a woman of color, what would you say to the immigrant communities that why is it important for us to be active in politics? Go vote, campaign, knock at the door, call a friend, donate whatever you can. Why is it important for us to be politically active?
Well, I mean, it's because I think people can recognize more so than ever, and the pandemic really amplified the social inequities and the social injustice that occur in our system, right? And I think it is extremely important to know that you have a voice, that your voice matters. Get involved, right? Even if you can't vote today, let's say you're a permanent resident, but getting involved because the decisions made today are going to impact your future, right? So it's important to even though you can't vote today, it is extremely important to understand what each political party is bringing forward, what are their values, and then ask yourself, what's important to me? What are my core fundamental values? Looking at their families, looking at their children, and supporting their future means that you start working on this now. Start supporting a party that will be the voice, that will truly represent you. And to be honest, Feroz, no other party will, with the exception of the NDP.
And historically, there are evidences, and particularly I often say this to my friends, that, you know, imagine if you didn't have any universal healthcare. Imagine the benefits that you enjoy as an immigrant here. And this is one of the things that I say to immigrant communities. I often ask this question that, I mean, we humans are not, you know, there are other creatures, other animals that are social. Dolphins are highly social. You know, bees are highly social. But humans are political creatures. if we do not take part in politics. And I think what's happening at the moment, I mean, I have seen many notable scholars are saying is that it's not that the world's current crisis was unforeseeable, but it's the apathy. It's the, it's like the young people. And that's why I'm really proud of, Noor, that she's running for politics, is because what Noor said, that, I mean, to be very honest, we grown-ups, we have kind of destroyed things. We have we have messed things up. Now, Noor, question to you, that you have graduated from sociology. In sociology, you study social structure, and you graduated from University of Guelph. I think as a graduate of sociology, you understood you had to study a lot of social structures that you would probably not study if you would study, let's say, probably accounting. I'm not discounting accounting.
Right.
Question, could you reflect that what are some of the inequalities, systemic racism, or oppressive structures that you did not know as a child or as a young woman, as a girl, but now in
Right.
after graduating from sociology and running for the writing that you're writing?
Right. So as a child, there were a lot of times that I was, and I hate to say it now, that I was embarrassed of being different, right? Like I said, I would go to school with henna on my hands, and I would spend days trying to understand why would it be that the different kid, the kid who has brown skin, is getting picked on, meanwhile the other kids are not getting picked on, right? And I never really understood why it was. It was really sad. It went on till, even today, I still experience discrimination. Being a woman, being of color, it's really hard. So it's just issues affecting me, right? So, and other people that are also of color. So, racism is huge. Like I said, being of color, and it just really speaks to my heart. So I just don't want to,
What did you learn from your program, though?
What did I learn from my
Yeah,
program?
we
That
talk about
there's a lot of systemic issues, right? Like I took poli-sci courses as well, and I still speak to students that are in other programs that don't even know what parties are running in Canada, right? What they offer, the different platforms, and it's all systemic when it comes to racism, not knowing, how decisions that we make today in government affect our future. And I've learned a lot about, the structural impact that affects us today.
Absolutely. Aisha, now this is a very important question, and I hope that we are able to circulate this message to all people from Guelph, and this obviously for your writing to Noor, is what are some of the pressing concerns of Guelph that you think our current elected official from Liberal Party is not looking at it? They're not, you think these are pressing concerns? But do you think that those pressing concerns are adequately addressed by the current elected official? If not, when you take the office, how would you address those things differently?
So the concerns that we have locally are reflected broadly across the country, such as affordability, the response to the climate crisis, the injustice against Indigenous peoples. The Liberal government had committed to ending the drinking water advisories across Indigenous communities. They had committed to ending that in March, and they failed to do so, right? Still, Indigenous communities are faced with drinking water that has toxins in it, and the government needs to really, truly commit to the TRC, and the Liberals have not, right? We hear about these unmarked graves from residential schools. And granted, we are unable to bring those children back. But my question to the Liberal government is this: what are you prepared to do to save the children that we can? We know that Indigenous communities suffer from suicide rates that are far beyond that compared to the general population. We know that they suffer from substance use disorder. We understand that they live in deplorable housing conditions that are unsafe. And if we truly accept that the government is responsible for the atrocities against Indigenous people, if they accept responsibility, only then can we reconcile and support and help them. They have gone through generations of trauma, right? No wonder why they are suffering, and we need to support their recovery. So that's one of the issues. Affordability is another one. Their commitment to housing hasn't really been reflected here. If we look at affordable housing, by definition is only 20% below the going market. But what we have to address is, what is that going market today, right? Even 20% below that is not affordable for many people. So addressing the rise in cost of living, the government has failed to provide oversight and regulate. And I'm really concerned, right? I'm concerned that, people are not being paid a living wage, that there isn't full-time employment, including benefits. And to be honest with you, Feroz, I'm waiting for the day that a doctor never has to turn to their patient and ask them if they have extended health coverage to cover the medication that individual patient needs in order to look after themselves, right? I'm waiting for that day that is no longer in question, that people will have all prescription medication covered. I have witnessed patients coming in and, they may have hypertension or they suffer from mental illness. And when I ask them if they've been taking their medications, there's this look of shame, and that shouldn't be happening. People should not have to make that difficult decision of, do I pay for my medications or do I provide food on the table for my family? And that is the reality for many Canadians. Many Canadians are working 2 or 3 jobs in order to make ends meet, and that is no way of living. That is not life. So what is the government going to do to protect and support their people?
Exactly.
And I think that's very relevant here.
Yeah, and even in the midst of pandemic, NDP put the very, very necessary pressure on the Liberal government when the emergency package, the funding that was sent. The Liberal government was, they were tight-fisted. No, maybe, $800, $900, $1,000. But you see, this is, Aisha, you have already identified it already, that because NDP is not the government, is not running, it hasn't formed the government, we don't a lot of the time see the invaluable contributions NDP have made. I mean, this is so, and this is why I particularly feel that the immigrant communities need to be very, very active. If the NDP government forms the government, NDP party forms them in a government, and if you get elected, what are some of the changes you intend to bring in your local riding? Each of you, these are the changes that you want to bring if you get elected. And Noor, the same question to you.
So for me, I had worked in emergency psychiatry and it was out of the Guelph General Hospital, but employed by Homewood. And I was seeing more and more teenagers, youth coming into the emergency department in crisis. So either they were very serious suicide attempts, self-harming behaviors, experiencing anxiety and depression. And yet when we talk about community resources to help with supporting people with mental illness, quite frankly, it could be very much close to non-existent, right? So at the time, for for a child to see a child psychiatrist, the wait times were 9 months. And now we're hearing in the news that it's anywhere between 18 to 22 months, which is coming from Toronto, right? So this was news from Toronto. I would imagine that it's relatively the same here in Guelph. What we need to do is we need to strengthen our Medicare system, ensuring that it includes mental health. The overdose, the crisis when we talk about the drug overdoses, the reality is that these are accidental overdoses with the individual having zero intent to take their life. We need to support addictions recovery. We need to have more hospital beds to support our community. For years, we've been promised a second hospital, and our population continues to grow because Guelph is identified as being probably one of the best cities to live in Canada. And I'm very, proud to say that, and I welcome people coming, but we have to look at our social supports. Do we have healthcare services to support our population? And unfortunately, that is not the case. So I would like to see, a commitment from the federal government to support people in need. Those are some of the things I would work on. The other thing is I'm hearing more and more people that have sponsored their loved ones, let it be their husband or spouse or extended family, have been waiting for years, right? Someone spoke to me the other day and said, it's been 5 years. Another friend of mine is waiting for her spouse, and it's been 3 years. The NDP is committed to a service guarantee, which means that you will get a response. And none of this, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait, or it's still in queue. That's not acceptable, right? These are elected officials. They have a job to do, and that is to address the needs of their constituents. And I hope that, once elected, I will continue to do that advocacy work. I've been doing that all along, and I don't see that changing. In fact, I will continue to fight for Guelphites and the country.
Thank you, Aisha. And Noor, what were some of the desirable changes you would want to see in your writing?
So my writing is full of small businesses, and myself being a small business owner, I've struggled through COVID and COVID recovery. I mean, as we're entering a fourth wave, COVID is far from being done with. And the NDP is committed to helping small businesses. I am going to make sure that instead of the big corporations and the big boxes and the big stores getting help, small businesses are finally going to have a voice, and I'm going to be that voice. Affordable housing, like people can't afford to buy homes. I'm struggling personally. Like if we were to sell our home, I don't even know where we would go, right? So affordable housing, the NDP is committed to having 500,000 units of quality, affordable housing within 10 years, and half of them being done in 5. I'm committed to helping the community and better understand the issues that my riding is facing. If elected, I'm committed to moving to the riding to understand, to gain a better understanding of the issues that my riding, has to go through. So those are.
Thank you. One of the things that, as a teacher, as a researcher, kind of annoys me when I think about internationally. So if you ask about Canada Prime Minister, I hear this, Canada, Justin Trudeau's camera-ready smile and all the pleasantries. You gotta give it to him. Is that he knows how to dodge very direct question. And I don't know. I don't know how he developed it. Maybe this is what politicians do, that to be able to dodge question when hard questions are given to him. As the candidates for the local ridings, in your view, what are some of the biggest failures of the current Liberal government that you would want Canadians and around the world to know, that you feel that, okay, these are the things? I know Aisha has touched on a few of them, But if you would actually like count that these are the failures that you often do not get to see behind Justin Trudeau's, pleasant sophistry or, camera smiles.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing for me would be the lack of leadership and government oversight. I'm thinking about the long-term care homes. Our seniors, for 16 years ago, I was working with the Ontario Health Coalition, really advocating for a minimum of 4 hours of direct care for our seniors. And that was about 16 years ago. And still, we wait. So what we found, or what we really accepted or understood, was that long-term care homes, the ones that were for profit, were the ones that were most they're the ones that endured the most casualties when we talk about our seniors. So what I would like to see is to take the profit out of long-term care, make sure that there is better government oversight. Seniors are very near and dear to me. I really feel that they need to be treated with dignity and respect. And that means that we need to ensure that there's funding so that they are well resourced. Long-term care homes give our seniors an opportunity to continue living when they're unable to do so themselves. So that would be definitely something that I would like to see the government do, and they have failed to do so. Making sure that our public services and goods remain public, delivered publicly, and to not allow the privatization to come into it, because their agenda is very different. It's driven by profits. And what happens is that people suffer. And so that is something that I would like to see addressed.
And Noor, what, in your view, what would be some of the failures you think? Do you have anything to add, or you would agree with Aisha?
I would agree with everything that my mom said. I think for me as well, like housing and student debt is huge, right? So after I graduated in 2019, I wanted to do my master's. And a huge concern for me, or to be honest, the only concern for me, was being able to afford going to school to pursue my master's. And I think it's really sad and unfortunate that there's many Canadians that are wanting to pursue a certain career or wanting to go to school, but there isn't enough funding for them to be able to afford to gain an education. And it's really unfair, because it's kind of a loop, right? So if you're not able to go to school, then you have troubles gaining a job, right? And then you have difficulty being able to afford a house. And who's accountable for that, right? In 6 years, what has Justin Trudeau done for us? For students, for Canadians, for adults, for seniors, right? Obviously as a youth, affordability and student debt is huge for me. I'm still paying off, I still have, to be honest, I haven't even started paying a student debt. I'm attending a post-grad program, and it's just really unfortunate that, there's students that are unable to either continue their education or further their education because there isn't enough funding. Even there's OSAP, but it's not enough, right?
And the NDP are committed to doubling up our grants, right, from the federal government. So that would be very helpful. And to eliminate interest, off the loans, because that's unfair as well.
It's another, it's a huge weight on my shoulders, right? As I'm not able to afford to pay my student debt off, I'm also collecting,
incurring.
interest. So it's just sad, right? Because I could have fully been doing my master's right now, but just because of financial, the lack of financial assistance from the government, I'm not able to. And I'm sure I'm not only speaking on behalf of myself, but many other youth that are in similar situations.
I mean, Noor right now, she's running, and she's also a full-time student, and she continues to work part-time. So, you know, running
a small business owner.
Yeah, so you know, running as a candidate is a full-time job in itself. So it makes me feel really proud that Noor is trying to do the best that she can to bring a voice for youth and racialized people. So
absolutely.
And it's, you know, it's really, I'm telling you, it's easier said than done. Like my mom said, I'm a full-time student. I do work, small business owner, right? You know, it's difficult, but this is very important to me. And, you know, it's crucial that there needs to be a representation of young people in office. It's crucial, right?
Yeah, young people, and also I would say people of color, racialized.
Oh, 100%. That goes without saying, right?
Yeah.
And women, right?
Yeah.
Right. So like I hit all three. And you know, there's challenges that I've faced, that I've seen my mom face.
And we need to address them.
Yeah, we need to address them.
Yeah. Now I'm going to ask towards the, I mean, this is probably the hardest question, and also one of the last questions that we have. Like self-reflection, like taking a hard, honest look at ourselves. I'm going to hold the Bangladeshi community, Bengali community, South Asian community to actually reflect on it and to understand that why the political solidarity is important for us and for people. So I often say it this way, that we immigrants, people of color, we South Asians, or in Muslims, or in what us, etc., we benefit from the resistance and a struggle that have been put forward, have been fought by Black and Indigenous people for hundreds of years. But when I came to Canada as an international graduate student, I was perplexed at my own ignorance, the depth of my ignorance. And I was also shocked seeing that how a lot of the times we are okay enjoying the benefits that has been achieved because of the struggles of Black and Indigenous people. But when it comes to extending our solidarity, I'm not saying immigrant communities are not doing it. I personally feel that we are not doing enough. So do you think that as South Asian communities, are we doing enough to stand shoulder and shoulder with Black and Indigenous people who have been oppressed for so long, and we benefit from their struggle? And what would we need to do? What could we do to actually express our solidarity, with those struggles?
We need to do more.
We need to do much more, a lot more. We cannot conquer this alone, and we must remember that it is all one struggle. From the Blacks who came to Canada during the Civil War, to the Chinese that built the railway, and to the Jews that fled the Nazis, right? To the South Asian immigrants, or more recent decades, above all, the natives that have lived here for 10,000s of years. Remember, it is all just one struggle for justice and for equality. And that is why the NDP's most important slogan is solidarity, right? Together. We live it, we breathe it, and we mean it. And it is our core fundamental value. There's no question about it. And that's what brings all of us together. I think about this campaign, and we've been having volunteers, people reaching out that they want to be part of this movement. And this movement is about transformational change. And what the NDP bring, and what the other parties fail to do, is we bring hope. And I'm really counting on voters to be inspired that we can bring about change. And when they cast their vote, it is that vote for hope. It's not fear mongering. It's none of that. And if you continue to vote the status quo, don't expect anything different.
What do you have any? And wonderfully said, Aisha. Wonderfully said. Noor, do you have? Would you like to add something onto that?
I think my mom had covered everything.
It's hard to. It's
It
hard
definitely
to. Absolutely. Aisha, how can people help your campaign who are watching this conversation now, will be watching and will be circulated among people in different parts of Guelph and Canada? Please, tell us, how we can be part of your campaign.
So we are welcoming all the help that people are willing to offer. I'm going to give you the number for my campaign manager. It's 519-760-2413, or please feel free to email me at aisha.jahangir@ndp.ca. If people would like to hand out literature by dropping them off at people's homes, or if they would like to donate, because campaigns need resources and funding in order to run, I would welcome that, and I would encourage that. This is a very, very exciting time, and I'm hopeful that we will be successful.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Aisha. Thank you so much, Noor, for making some time for us. And we look forward to see the election coming. And I usually say that it's time that we paint Canada orange. Thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you
Have
so
a
much.
wonderful day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum.